Get that bum off the porch before he stinks up the lobby. The words exploded like a slap across the rain-soaked silence outside Desert Haven Motel. The man yelling wore a pressed shirt, a gold watch, and the smug authority of someone who'd never missed a warm bed in his life. He pointed at the shadow hunched near the motel's wooden steps, soaked to the bone, shivering, one eye gone behind a sunken socket, the other dimmed by war or time. No one could tell. His jacket, a faded military cut with half-torn seams, clung to his frame like the past that never let go. Ellie Sanders didn't say a word at first. She stood behind the cracked glass of the front window, her hands gripping the counter so tightly her knuckles turned white. The storm outside had been screaming since dusk, the kind of Arizona desert storm that didn't knock politely. It broke things. Roof tiles, power lines, people. The man outside said nothing in response. He didn't beg, didn't explain, just lowered his head slightly like he'd expected this. Like he'd heard it before, many times. And that, right there, was what broke her. She stepped out into the rain without an umbrella. "Sir," she said quietly, ignoring the still grumbling guest behind her. "Do you need a place to dry off?" He hesitated, then nodded. Just once. He had no ID. No name he was willing to share beyond Ray. No wallet. Nothing but a water-drenched backpack, and a limp that told stories even silence couldn't hold. Ellie didn't ask questions. She handed him the brass key to room 5, the one where the heater still miraculously worked, and told him the shower might take a while to warm up, but the water ran clean. She didn't charge him. That night, Desert Haven remained as dark and forgotten as always. But room 5 glowed faintly, one yellow light through lace curtain and fogged glass. Ellie later returned with a chipped mug of hot tea and a wool blanket from her father's old chest. When Ray opened the door, steam curled behind him. His jacket was hanging over the heater vent. He looked smaller without it. "I figured you could use this," she said, offering the mug and blanket. He stared at them like they didn't belong to this world. Then he took them both with trembling hands. "You're kind," he murmured. Ellie shook her head. "My dad ran this place for 30 years. Taught me not to ask too many questions when someone's just cold and tired." He gave a faint, almost reluctant smile. "Your dad military?" "Yeah, Marines. Vietnam." He nodded. "Figures." And then he stepped back inside, gently closing the door. From the lobby, she watched the storm rage on. The rain hammered the windows, the old neon vacancy sign flickered like a dying pulse, and behind her, the faint tick of her father's wind-up clock echoed through an empty office that smelled like instant coffee and tired dreams. In room 5, Ray sat on the edge of the bed, both hands wrapped around that mug like it was an anchor. His shoulders sagged, his eyes fixed on nothing. But for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel hunted by the silence, just held. The next morning, the sky was clearer, but the motel was not. Gutters hung loose. The gravel lot had turned into a muddy soup. Room 3 was flooding again. Ellie found the mattress soaked and sighed, then flinched at the sound behind her. Ray stood there, not saying anything, just grabbed the other end of the mattress. They carried it together, dropped it beside the dumpster. Ellie turned to thank him, but he was already walking away. 10 minutes later, she saw him again, on the roof of room 3, hammer in hand. By noon, he'd patched the leak using scrap tin she didn't even remember keeping. By late afternoon, the lobby heater finally blew warm air instead of dust. She hadn't asked. He hadn't offered explanations, just worked, quiet, steady. Like he was fixing something that mattered more than wiring. "Don't you ever sit down?" she called from the porch. He looked up from the loose siding he was reattaching on the laundry shed. "Not unless I'm ordered to." "Well, I'm the boss around here now," she said, "and I'm ordering you to take a break." He chuckled softly and walked toward her, wiping his hands on an old rag. Only then did she notice the limp, subtle but constant. like a memory that never healed. "You always take in strays?" he asked, leaning against the rail. "Only the quiet, useful ones," she replied. They drank coffee in silence, not the kind that stretched, the kind that settled. She looked at him, really looked. "You ever talk about it?" she asked. "Where you served?" He didn't answer right away, just stared out at the gravel, watching desert wind carry scraps of paper like ghosts. "Special operations," he said finally. "Long time ago. Most of it's still sealed. Some of it's still in my head. My dad didn't talk much either. Said it was hell. Said he was lucky to come back." Ray turned his head slightly, looking at the cracked wood of the porch rail. "You close with him?" "I was," she said softly. "He ran this place until the end. It gave him purpose. Structure." Ray nodded slowly. "Seems like the kind of place a Marine would build." Ellie smiled, but it was the tired kind. "I'm trying to keep it going, but the town's on my back. Fire codes, permits. I've got maybe $5,000 worth of work to do and $0 to do it with." He didn't say anything, just listened, like someone used to hearing broken stories that didn't need fixing, just understanding. That night, she made pancakes, left an extra plate outside room 5. But when she opened the door the next morning, the room was empty. No sound of toolbox. No jacket drying on the vent. No scent of heating wire and wet canvas. The key lay on the desk, and beside it, folded in two, a square of paper. Blocky handwriting, just one line. "You did what others wouldn't. Now let's see what happens when we do the same. R." She stared at it for a long time, then slipped it into her wallet. And she didn't know it yet, but that night, when she left the porch light on just in case, it would be the beginning of something bigger than shelter, something sacred. If you believe no veteran should ever be turned away in the rain, comment below, "No one gets left outside." Do you think Ray will come back? What would you have done in Ellie's place? "You're not just fixing wires, are you?" That's what Ellie found herself asking 2 days after Ray vanished. Not because he answered, but because the motel kept changing even after he was gone. It started with the breaker box. She was sweeping the front office when she noticed it. The old rusted box, previously sparking and buzzing like an angry beehive, was humming steadily. No smell of burnt plastic, no flickering lights, no fire risk. And she hadn't touched it. She walked outside, puzzled. The rain had dried days ago, but a fresh patch of roofing, neat and secured with matching nails, now gleamed above room 3. And there, tucked behind the laundry shed, sat a small plastic toolbox. Open, used, and not hers. Ray had left something behind. But maybe, she thought, he'd left more than tools. That evening, she sat on the motel porch again, knees pulled up beneath her father's old Marine blanket. Desert wind brushed her cheek like memory. She didn't know what haunted her more, the silence, or the fact she missed hearing the low clink of a wrench in the distance. Then came Thursday. It arrived like an ultimatum. A white envelope stuck under the office door, sealed with the town seal. Inside, Ellie read the words she had been dreading. "You are hereby given a 10-day notice to comply with Fire Safety Code 223C. Failure to update your alarm systems and replace your main electrical infrastructure will result in the loss of your business license." She stood frozen on the porch, holding the paper with fingers that barely felt the wind anymore. Ray had vanished. The bank had said no. The fire marshal didn't return her calls. Even the local veterans office, when she asked for help, gave her a polite shrug and a pamphlet with a checklist she couldn't afford. She was out of time. Ellie didn't cry, not yet. She just sat on the porch swing, eyes lost in the barren gravel lot. The rust-bitten motel sign creaking faintly above her like it knew the end was coming too. When the sun slipped behind the ridge, she locked the lobby and walked through the hallway in silence. Room 5 was empty now. Cold. The blanket she had given him was folded on the dresser, along with the mug he had used. Clean, dry, placed like a silent thank you. That night, Ellie dreamed of her father's voice. She dreamed of his old boots in the hallway and the way he used to say, "Don't worry about saving the whole world. Just keep your post standing." By sunrise, she had made a decision. If the world was going to close her down, it would do so with her head held high. She began cleaning everything. She scrubbed each window, polished every door handle, hauled out broken furniture from room 7 with aching arms and no help. She even dusted her father's medals still hanging behind the front desk. Desert Haven wouldn't go down in disgrace. But then, something shifted. Friday morning. She came out to sweep the walkway and found the vending machine humming softly. It hadn't worked in 2 years. The next day, the Wi-Fi, down for months, was suddenly working again. There was no tech guy, no repair truck, just quiet miracles stacking up like bricks on a forgotten foundation. And then, Saturday morning, she heard the sound. A door creaked open. Footsteps, familiar in weight and rhythm, crossed the courtyard. She turned, broom still in hand. Ray. He was back. His jacket still worn, his limp still subtle. But something in his shoulders had changed. Like he was carrying not just his pack now, but purpose. Ellie opened her mouth, but no words came. He beat her to it. "I figured you could use a proper electrician." She blinked. "You didn't have to come back." Ray shrugged. "Didn't say I wouldn't." They worked side by side that whole day. He didn't ask questions. She didn't offer explanations. But when he reached into the office fuse panel, she saw it. A faint scar across his wrist, deep and faded. The kind that said this man had once grabbed something burning rather than let someone else fall. "You ever stop moving?" she asked, only half joking. "Not unless I'm told to." "Well, I'm the boss, and I'm telling you to sit for 5 minutes." He chuckled and leaned against the porch railing. The wind caught his jacket open, revealing just for a second a patch on the inside lining. A faded eagle perched atop a globe and anchor. The USMC seal. The words KOR, Dalton, barely visible underneath. "You were an officer?" she asked softly. He didn't reply directly. Just said, "Command teaches you that no one eats until the last man is fed. I wasn't about to let your place starve." Ellie swallowed hard. "You don't even know me." "I didn't need to," he said, eyes steady. "You opened a door, when no one else would." Ray didn't just help fix things. He rebuilt hope. He rewired room 8 completely, without a blueprint. He realigned the laundry shed doors that had been stuck for years. When the town inspector passed by that afternoon and saw him working, he didn't ask for permits. He just gave a respectful nod and said, "Looks better already." Ellie knew they still needed thousands, still needed official systems. But something was shifting, and not just in the wiring. Saturday night, Ellie made eggs and toast and 2 mugs of hot chocolate. They ate on the porch as the desert wind turned cool. "You always do this for strangers?" he asked. She looked down at her plate. "Not usually, but you didn't feel like a stranger." Ray stared into the distance for a moment. "Places like this used to mean something," he said quietly. "Shelter, respect, a hot meal without a questionnaire." She nodded. "That's why I stayed. I couldn't let it die." Ray looked at her then, and for the first time, she saw him not as the man who knocked in the rain, but as someone who had once led men through hell and never stopped carrying them. That night, she found another folded note on the front counter. Just one word. Soon. No name, no signature, Just promise. And in the distance, far beyond the horizon, engines were starting. You think you know what's coming next? You don't. But you can feel it, can't you? If you believe forgotten veterans deserve more than silence, type in the comments, "I would have opened the door." And subscribe, because what happens in part 3 will shake the entire town of Flagstaff. The storm was only the beginning. Is that a convoy? The words left Ellie's lips barely above a whisper, but they struck the air like lightning. She wasn't expecting an answer, because the dust cloud rising beyond the ridge already said everything. It was early morning, the sun still yawning over the hills of northern Arizona, when the thunder of engines broke the stillness. 1. Then 2. Then more than she could count. Jeeps, flatbeds, Humvees, all military green. All moving like they'd never forgotten how to roll into unknown territory. Tight, silent, deliberate. Ellie stepped onto the porch, her heart pounding. Coffee mug still in her hand, untouched. Her mouth opened, but no words came. What she saw wasn't real. Couldn't be. Yet it was. Truck after truck pulled into the gravel lot of Desert Haven, tires crunching in perfect rhythm, dust swirling around them like a curtain drawing back before a performance no one expected. Doors opened, not with chaos, but with purpose. Men and women stepped out, all ages, some young, buzz-cut, straight posture, some older, with silver hair under veteran ball caps and worn boots that had seen 3 wars. Some carried toolboxes, others held fire extinguishers, buckets of paint, bundled wires, drills, ladders. And then, he stepped out. Ray. But this time, he wasn't limping in a torn jacket, soaked and forgotten. He wasn't anonymous. He wasn't invisible. He was in full-dress uniform. Marine Corps blue. Polished boots. Medals aligned on his chest like testimony. Across his nameplate, Dalton. K-O-R. Ellie gasped. He approached with calm precision, stopping 5 feet from her porch. He removed his cap, placed it against his chest, and said, loud enough for the workers behind him to hear, "Miss Sanders, permission to assist with repairs to this facility." Ellie couldn't move, couldn't speak. Her legs shook beneath her. Her world tilted. Ray gave a faint smile. "I heard there's a fire code violation." Behind him, 2 men began unloading new fire alarms. Another rolled out spools of electrical wire. A young woman with army fatigues unfolded blueprints on the hood of a Jeep. "Ray, what is this?" Ellie finally managed. "After I left, I made some calls," he said. "To people I served with, people I bled with, people who owed me favors, and some who just wanted one last chance to serve a mission that mattered." One of the men, tall, mid-50s, prosthetic hand, nodded toward Ellie and said, "Ray said this place gave him dignity when the world didn't. That was all we needed." Ellie felt tears rising. "I didn't do anything," she whispered. "You didn't ask for anything," Ray said. "That's what made it matter." They got to work like clockwork. Ladders rose, metal clanged, generators fired up. It wasn't construction, it was choreography. Every person had a role. Every gesture meant something. And Ellie, for the first time in weeks, months, maybe years, didn't feel alone. Inside the lobby, fire code signs were printed and laminated within an hour. The old fuse box was unbolted and wheeled out like a relic. In its place stood a military-grade panel, wired to code by a man who once built barracks in Kandahar. Ellie's hands trembled as she touched the edge of it. How is this even legal?" Ray tilted his head. "Some of them are certified contractors. Some are VA engineers. One's a former fire marshal. Another designed trauma centers for soldiers with PTSD. They didn't come for money. They came for the mission. The same guest who once shouted, "Get that bum off the porch!" now stood speechless at the edge of the lot, watching these men and women work in seamless unity. His eyes narrowed, then darted away when Ellie looked at him. He had called Ray trash. He had demanded his removal. Now that bum had just saved Desert Haven. Later that day, Ellie walked inside to find a small brass plaque already bolted beside the office door. She didn't order it. She hadn't even known it was coming. It read, "Desert Haven, for those who served and the ones who remembered." She knelt before it, fingers trembling, brushing dust from its edge. The sun was high by then. The courtyard buzzed with drills and distant country music from a Jeep radio. Someone had hung a new American flag on a pole near the entrance. A young man saluted it as he passed. And still, they kept coming. By late afternoon, more trucks arrived. A trailer filled with mattresses, a van carrying therapy dog equipment. A retired Army chaplain stepped out and nodded at Ellie. "Ray said you were the real one who held the line." "Me?" she said. He smiled. "One room, one key, one night. You think that's nothing, but it lit the signal." That evening, after the last Jeep shut down its engine, Ellie sat on the porch with Ray again. The motel looked different now. Not just newer, alive. Like it had rediscovered its breath. "You're different," she said softly. Ray looked out at the lot. So are they. Most of those people haven't worn the uniform in years, but they still remember what it meant. She tilted her head. "And what happens now?" Ray stood, pulled something from his pocket, a small folded envelope, and handed it to her. "Open it tomorrow." "Why?" He met her eyes. "Because some storms don't bring damage. Some bring answers." Ellie stared at him. Something in her chest ached. Not pain, hope. Before you scroll, ask yourself this. Would you have opened that door? If your answer is yes, comment, "One key, one night. That's all it takes." And follow this story, because what's inside that envelope might change everything. ChatGPT Danai. He finally slept through the night. That's what the woman said when she stepped out of room 7 at sunrise, tears in her eyes. One hand clutching the arm of her husband who had barely spoken a full sentence in 2 years. His steps were slow, but steady. His face lined with pain, but his eyes, this morning, they weren't haunted. They were clear. For the first time since his return from Fallujah, Master Sergeant Lewis Kemp had closed his eyes and made it until morning without waking up screaming. Ellie stood on the porch, barefoot, wrapped in a blanket, and holding her second cup of coffee. She watched them cross the courtyard, the quiet between them, not heavy, but peaceful. It was a silence that said healing was possible. And in that moment, she finally understood what Desert Haven had become. It wasn't just saved. It had been transformed. 3 days had passed since the convoy. The drills were quiet now, replaced by conversation. The scent of sawdust and fresh paint lingered in the air, mixing with the desert wind. Room 6 now had blackout curtains and soundproof walls, designed by a retired Army engineer who'd once built forward operating bases in Kandahar. Room 9 had been converted into a canine therapy space, complete with custom kennels and chew toys, donated by a former canine handler who had driven 20 hours to be here. Room 10 now held a massage chair and a coffee machine more advanced than anything Ellie had ever dared install. But it wasn't the upgrades that struck her most. It was the quiet, not the emptiness kind, the kind that wrapped around you like safety, like being seen without being stared at. Every room had a soft glow behind its curtain. Every guest moved like they belonged here, like they were safe for the first time in a long time. At 7 a.m., the flag went up. Ellie raised it herself. Ray stood beside her, hand over heart, face solemn but proud. A few other vets stepped out of their rooms to join. No orders were given, no speeches were made, just the flag rising, the wind catching it gently, and a quiet, "Hoorah!" whispered from someone behind her. Inside the office, she finally opened the envelope Ray had given her. It wasn't a check. It was a folded sheet of paper. On it, an official invitation from the National Veterans Transition Conference in Flagstaff. She had been selected, nominated without her knowing, as a civilian leader in veteran recovery initiatives. They wanted her to speak, to share what Desert Haven had become. Her hands trembled as she read it again. She looked up at Ray, who had silently walked in behind her. "You did this?" He didn't answer directly. Sometimes the right person just needs the right mic. "I'm not a speaker." "You are now." She wanted to laugh, wanted to cry. Instead, she placed the letter gently on the desk right beneath her father's folded flag. That afternoon, a volunteer named Willa, former logistics officer in Ray's last command, walked her through the new intake process. She brought an iPad, a barcode system for room keys, and a clipboard filled with intake sheets. Ellie blinked. "I used to just ask if they wanted decaf or regular," she said. Willa smiled. "You still can, but now they'll know they're checking into something bigger than just a room." As they walked the lot together, Ellie noticed something tucked behind the chapel room. The converted storage shed, now turned into a meditation and memory space. A pile of folded paper cranes. Dozens, maybe hundreds. All made from pages torn out of military handbooks, field manuals, discharge notices. "They leave them there after they sleep," Willa explained. "It's like a way to let go." Inside room 8, a Gulf War medic named Terrence kept a journal on the nightstand, each entry a sentence. One line, every night. He never let anyone read it, but he always left the last line open. Empty. As if to say, tomorrow might be the day I close it. By now, word was spreading. The sheriff's deputy who once issued Ellie her last warning returned. Not in uniform, but with his father, a Vietnam vet. They stayed 2 nights. On the second morning, the old man left a Purple Heart in a glass case on the lobby counter. No note. Just a post-it that read, "He finally smiled." And still, Ellie kept running the place the same way. She brewed the coffee by 6:30, folded towels with care, kept the porch lights on after dark. But now, others helped. Vets took turns mowing the grass, patching fences, painting trim. No one asked for money. No one kept score. That night, as the sun lowered and shadows stretched across the gravel lot, Ellie sat by the fire pit. A few others joined. No names exchanged, just stories. One man spoke of a buddy he couldn't save. Another confessed he hadn't slept in a real bed in 9 months. A woman, Air Force, scar down her cheek, simply stared at the flames, her silence louder than any speech. Ray passed around mugs of chamomile tea, his steps quiet, measured. He handed Ellie hers without a word. Just a nod. She looked around. This wasn't a motel anymore. It was a sanctuary. "Before you go, let me ask you something. Have you ever stayed awake at night because your mind wouldn't let you forget? If so, type in the comments, 'I believe in quiet places,' and keep watching. Because in the next part, Ellie will stand before a national stage. But what she says will speak for everyone who's ever been forgotten." We'd like to invite Miss Ellie Sanders as keynote speaker at the National Veterans Transition Conference. The words echoed through the phone like they didn't belong in the real world. Ellie stood frozen in the lobby of Desert Haven, hand trembling as she gripped the old rotary handset. The same phone her father used to take late-night calls from stranded truckers and lonely Marines. Now it rang with the weight of recognition. She had never spoken on a stage, never been to a conference, never wanted her name in a program. But someone had submitted her story, Someone had told them about the door she opened during that storm, about the one-eyed veteran the world tossed aside, and about what happened after. She looked over at Ray, who stood quietly in the corner, arms crossed. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. His presence had always been enough. "I'm not a speaker," Ellie murmured into the phone. "That's why you're the right one," came the reply. A week later, Ellie stood backstage at the Flagstaff Civic Auditorium, clutching a small note card. The stage lights glared from behind the curtain. She could hear the murmurs of hundreds of people, veterans, military families, officials, reporters. She'd worn her best denim jacket, the one with her father's old USMC pin fastened just above the heart. When her name was called, she stepped forward. The room went still. She took a breath and spoke, not loud, but steady, just like the way her father used to tell stories. "I didn't build Desert Haven to change the world," she began. "I kept it because my father believed in quiet places, places where no one had to explain why they couldn't sleep through the night, where no one asked why you flinched at fireworks, where service didn't expire when the uniform came off." She paused, eyes scanning the crowd. Ray sat in the third row, still and unreadable. Beside him sat Willa, arms crossed, proud. Behind them, a row of Marines, some in uniform, others in street clothes, but all watching like they already knew what she would say. "I gave one man a key. That's it. I didn't ask where he came from. I didn't know his rank. I didn't even know his full name. He had no ID. One eye, a limp, and no one else would look at him." She swallowed hard. "Someone in my own lobby said he was a bum, said he would stink up the porch. That man has since moved out of town. He couldn't face what he said after the truth came out." The room held its breath. But the man he tried to throw away? He returned. In uniform. With a convoy of veterans who rebuilt my motel room by room. Not for money, not for attention, but because they believed in remembering the people this country forgets. Applause began to ripple, but Ellie lifted a hand. "I'm not asking for donations. I'm asking for eyes. Look around your communities. Look at the man sweeping the parking lot, the woman sitting quietly on the bus, the person with the service dog who just wants a meal in peace. Ask yourself, when was the last time you opened a door without expecting something in return?" She closed her note card. Didn't need it anymore. And the crowd rose to their feet. After the conference, a young woman approached her in tears. "My father never talked about the war, but I think he would have stayed in a place like yours." Ellie placed a hand on her shoulder. He would have been welcome. Back at Desert Haven, things continued, not with noise, but with rhythm. The chapel now had a row of wooden benches, hand-built by a vet from Oregon who drove down just to say thank you. A teenage boy showed up one evening with his mother. He wore a replica jacket from the 82nd Airborne, said he'd read about the place on a blog, asked if he could help sweep. Ellie gave him a broom and a plate of hot pancakes. Ray stayed. He never said it out loud, but he never left again. He ran morning drills with those who needed structure. He sat in the chapel with those who needed silence. He fixed things that broke and listened when words did more harm than good, and every night, Ellie would turn out the lobby light last, just like her father used to. She'd glance at the plaque outside the door. Her fingers would brush it gently as she whispered, "For those who served, and those who remembered." The man who once called Ray a bum never apologized, but rumor had it he tried to return months later, asking for a room. The front desk volunteer, a former Army nurse, looked him square in the eye and said, "We're full, especially of dignity," and no one disagreed. Now, Desert Haven was more than a motel. It was a monument to quiet heroism, a living, breathing place where nightmares softened, scars were respected, and healing didn't come with a clipboard. As dusk fell on another desert day, Ellie and Ray sat on the porch steps. The gravel lot was quiet. The fire pit glowed, and in the distance a lone motorcycle approached slowly. Another veteran, another story, another life about to change. Before you scroll, I ask you this. Would you have opened that door? Because sometimes the only difference between brokenness and healing is one key. If this story moved something in you, write in the comments. I will never forget the forgotten. And remember, when no one else will, be the one who opens the door.